So okay, there we go. That's the wash all off, and really it does bring it to life. I know you get a lot of people say it doesn't look realistic and all the rest of it. I think it just breaks a model down. It stops it looking very die-casty by having a good wash on it and something else like that. So you can see we're all over, really got it to life. Now, to be honest, I've gone around a couple of areas, like down here on the tail. You can see I've put a little bit more on. Now, two things for doing it that way. One is obviously the panel line stopped, so what I did was give it a little bit more just to help encourage it. I've just used a knife and gone along the panel line just to increase its depth, because when I wiped it off, obviously it all came off. So hopefully now when we come along, we just moisten this very slightly and just go against the actual panel line. You should, as you can see now, it's nicely on the edge of this tail where it wasn't before. Okay, and the same with the underside. We've done the underside as well, really, because it just didn't stick particularly well to this bit of the tail. So we just clean those up. So the same thing happened on a couple of spots on the aircraft. So we just polish those. Okay, big thing to remember is when you're going to put your flat coat on in a moment to dull this down again to get rid of this shine, obviously the wash will go slightly darker, so just have a look around and make sure you haven't got any darker little spots on there that might need polishing off. Now you can either use a cloth and just get into those areas where it's a little bit stronger, or certainly what you can do is use a Q-tip or cotton bud just to get it out of those actual areas. Remember little things like leading edges. Sometimes you get build up on the leading edges. You can probably see it on the wingtip here as well. So you might want to use a cotton bud, just wet it and then just spin it round and you'll get it off of the said areas on the little tips. But it's looking for those little build up areas where perhaps it's going to be a little bit too strong, because say when we do come along and put a flat coat over it, it'll dark it down, increase it, make it look a lot stronger. Last thing you want to do, and it's one thing I often forget to do myself, and it really, you know, it does show up, wet a cloth just slightly damp, okay, and just finally drag it in the direction of the airflow. Okay, as I say, all this will do will give us some nice weathering effects. If you have happened to miss a bit, it will just show it as going backwards with the airflow, which is something we want. So we just give that a last right down, but you can probably see from the underside got that nice motley look to it. Okay, make sure you get in between tails, things like that. Okay, and there we go, really happy with how this one's come out. So what we've done is we've taken it off of everywhere else. Okay, so we've taken them off these engines, those nozzles on the back, which have come out really, really nice. Not going to fit those, as I say, we want them to look nice and metally. Okay, we've also gone around and done things like the doors. We've got all the undercarriage doors, which obviously we sprayed up. As what this is going to have is actually two flat coats. It's going to have one in a moment, as you're going to see. Okay, and then I'm going to give it another one once all the pigments are on and it's had a bit of a scrub down and everything else like that, to sort of knock it off a little bit and just make it look a bit duller. That will fix in place, but what will happen is we will do that when it's all together. It's like a final flat coat before we sort of unmask and everything else like that. So now we want to give it a flat coat as we sit here. Now there's lots of flat coats on the market. My preferred one, as probably most of you know, is the Extra Acrylics Flat Varnish. I tend to find it does dull very, very nicely, but there are other obviously ones available. Anybody's flat coat will do. General rule of thumb, if you want to go a dead flat finish like we're going to do here, okay, we're going to need good air pressure. Okay, so what we do is plug in the old airbrush here. We're just going to put our airbrush cleaner through it, just to make sure we're all nice and clean, so you've got a good flow. Okay, now there's two little things you can do. You can either filter this, or another little technique, just shake, because obviously it will separate. You'll get the thicker, heavier stuff down the bottom. Okay, let it stand just for a couple of minutes. Let the big stuff actually fall out of suspension on this one. Now this is relatively a new bottle, so you don't have to worry, but perhaps if you haven't shaken up a bottle, you haven't done anything for a long time, that's what's going to happen, is you're going to get big lumps and it won't separate. The other thing as well, you might notice here on the cap, because I know it's a bit tricky because it's white, but you can probably see all this stuff at the top of the bottle here. Okay, this thick gloopy stuff, this is stuff you definitely don't want in your airbrush. This is what people say about extra acrylic paints is lumpy and bumpy and horrible and everything else, because if you get a bit of this inside the nozzle of your airbrush, down at the business end, it will bung up, and then you get spitting, and it jams, and then it works, and then it jams a bit more, and then it works a bit more, and everything else like that. So that is what you want to avoid. As I say, getting around that, you could filter it, something like that, but we're not going to worry so much about that for the moment. Good high air pressure. Just turn my compressor up to maximum. Okay, now what I'm going to do is very slowly pour this in, and I'm looking for lumps and bumps and nasties and horribles and everything else, okay? So I'm not putting tons in here because it's just going to be a light coat. So we've got it in the airbrush. Check our flow. I'm going to start with the underside, okay? And all we're going to do is literally put a coat on. Now we're not trying to cover it thickly or anything else. We're literally misting it on so it dulls down. And you'll probably see it a lot better in a moment on the top side. But just making sure we come in from all the angles. Just do these tails whilst we're here. But what you want to do is make sure, and luckily it's happening, which is make sure, you might see on the tip of the nozzle here, if we get it out of the shine, that top tip of the nozzle, this bit just up here, you've got a little white dot. Make sure every now and again you clean it up, but what it is, it's so thick, it's having trouble getting it out, and it's sticking to anything it can literally find. So what we want to do is just pop some clamps in behind it, like when we did it before, just to hold it. I'm just going to pour a little bit more in here. Doing this slightly cack-handed. There we go. Okay, and as you can probably see, as we put this on, it will dull it down quite a lot. So but as soon as you see any little white spots or anything appearing on the model, literally stop and clean off the end. But you can probably see already it's dulling down. A couple of passes on this should take care of this. But what it'll do, it'll give you a flatter, heavier look to the model by taking off this shine. But the other thing this is doing really is giving a good old grip to when we come along shortly, check we haven't got any, with the pigments for it to stick to grip inside and everything else. But you can probably see already we've gone from being very shiny to a nice flat dead look. Also, as you can probably see on camera, it's lighting it as well. It's giving it that heavy, I'm worn, I'm old look to the entire thing. Now at any point, if you wanted that you thought, hold on, it's a bit too much this, you can pop along with a satin right over the top and just make it look a little bit better. So we're just going around lightly now, just making sure we're going everywhere. Used up a colour cut, that's what we wanted. So now you should be able to see it's flat. It's given us more of that old warm look that we were after. When it's glossy, you sort of lose that thing. But what hopefully it's darkened up some of this weathering. The panel lines are looking a lot darker now, and it's just giving it the whole thing an older, worn look. Thing is, like everything on these things, we're going to leave that to dry off. So we're just going to stand it upside down. We're going to leave it for an hour to totally go off. We can flat coat, as I say, things like the tails now at the same time, all the little weapons, pylons, everything else like that. Okay, and then what we can start to do is get it together. Then we get the pigments on, all the little bits and pieces going over it, the gear installed, everything else like that, unmasked. We've still got to do the ejector seat and everything in and get those all done, and then we can really bring this one to an end. Okay, now the actual model's been drying for a couple of hours now. Just grab some gloves. It's all gone totally dry and everything else. Now what we've done here, we put on a top little bump, a little air scoop up there, as you can see, and then at the moment I haven't put on all the little aerials and things because what we want to do is give this a pigment scrub. Now I'm gloving up purely because these do tend to get rather messy and dirty, and if you get oil on your fingers it tends to transfer into fingerprints on the model itself. So either have nice dry hands, as there's tearing a glove, or have, warm them up a bit, or have, you know, basically some rubber gloves or something else like that. You'll just find it, otherwise you do tend to leave fingerprints all over your model. Now a couple of tools you're going to need, nothing special. Obviously you're going to need some pigment. So for R1, obviously I'll be using R1. This is the Flooring Models one. We do 7 colours of it through black, dark dirt, and my main 2, and the rust colour to give that nice sort of weathering effect in wheel wells, things like that. Won't be using the rust so much on this one, just perhaps the odd little dab. But obviously we do a light as well, and some other earthy type colours and sands and stuff like that. But so for this one, it's basically going to be the dark dirt and the black. Now the dark dirt itself is extremely close to the actual colour for the wash, which is the dark dirt as well, which is like the underside. The black is quite a strong black. Okay, the thing is with these, remember they are very, very messy. They can cause all types of trouble, so just make sure your area is clean, or just go around after it with a damp cloth. Tools we've got a brush here which I've cut down. All we've done is taken the ends off of it so it's quite stiffly. To tell you the truth, this is my dry brushing brush, which has had a very good clean out because normally it's got silver on it, so it's been in cleaner for the evening. We've got down here, now this is a rubber tool. You get it for artist shops and things like that, but it's basically a bit of rubber on the end, but you can do some quite interesting things with that, which I'll show you later. If you haven't got one of them, don't worry, cotton buds or Q-tips work just as equally as well. Now, as I said, it is messy, and normally I would put down some paper everywhere and do it like that. 2 things. One is I'm a bit tight, so you can actually use this again. Anything that spills down, and if it's on top of a big piece of white paper or any colour, you can just tip it back in and reuse it. But the thing is, it does tend to white out the camera a bit, so hence we're not doing it. So okay, to start with, what we're going to do, we're going to take some of the dark dirt. Okay, we're just going to take a little bit out of the dish, pop it in here, and all we're going to do is work it into the bristles of the brush. Now it does tend to flick everywhere and everything else like that, but we're just trying to load up the brush and make sure it's dry, that there's no wet in there. The thing is, if this got any dampness, it will streak onto the model. So all we're going to do, we'll just start on the top. We're just going to go along and give it a bit of a scrub in certain areas. So perhaps we're going to just pop some on the back panel up here. Down the other side. Some models I will go along and give a whole pigment scrub, but you can see you get this sort of grimy type effect to it and everything else. Now the thing is, with the pigments, like everything we do here, if you don't like it, if you wet a cotton bud like this, you can literally take it off again, okay, and it comes off on your cloth. Now there's a couple of techniques you can do with this which are interesting ones. You can take it back a bit like this, okay, and then go over it again, and you'll get some more sort of scraping type marks with it and things like that. If you don't like it, like there, it's a little bit too strong on that area, it's going a little bit funny now, just damp cloth, just wet a cloth and wipe it away. It all comes off on the cloth and not on you. So we're just going to wipe that back a bit, and what we're going to do, we're going to start in with the dark, with the black. I'm finding those are a little bit too browny, so we're just going to pick up again, just down in here, and then just some very, very light little scuffing, more around the back perhaps. And what we're trying to sort of recreate here is that sort of griminess the tops of aircraft get wet where there's crew walking over them. But if you knock some off, you won't take too much onto the model. And then what you can do is, all you're doing is it's getting caught in the texture of the paint on the top. The other thing you can do is grab cotton buds, load them up just like this, and then go along and literally you can then just put them in certain areas. Perhaps you've got these little areas, want to do little vane backs of panels and things, and you can do all types. And then obviously if it's a bit strong, you can wipe them back, okay, using the dry side because it's a little bit strong. You can just smear them in to give you that type of effect of the griminess on this wing. Okay, so it really does depend, but what you can do with these little rubber ones, you can make him real strong areas because it wipes it away. Okay, so you can actually do some nice sort of streaking marks. Oh, well, the camera's going to pick that up on the areas, so you can get this nice type of streaking. The other small effects you can do with it, if we show you on the underside, if you take a tiny bit on a cotton bud, we just load up with the black quite a bit on the cotton bud here. Then what we're going to do, we're just going to pick out some areas and we're just going to streak it back, slightly damp this. You can put them on just like these type of streaking like this, okay, perhaps some from the undersides, okay, just to give this look, because obviously it's slightly damp, so it's just keeping a touch on there, okay, and then either come along with dry cotton bud, but going with the direction of the airflow, drag it back. If you've got a bit too much in an area, just give it a bit of a scrape. And you can actually get some nice little oil type marks and streaks and things coming out of it just like that. So depending on how you want to use it, again, you don't like it, it's too strong, all you do, wet the cloth, give it a wipe. That engine isn't stuck in the back there, it's just for show. And there we go, it's gone. You can start again. So then you can come back and say, okay, we'll try that again, perhaps with some loose bits here to give us more of a ground down type of look around these back of these engines. And you can just do it this way. But as I said, here's the great thing with these, if you don't like it, you can literally just give them a rubbing, take them off, just like that, to give any type of weathering effect or, you know, staining or anything else you like. So if it is too strong, don't panic, just take it off. And that way you can build up, take away, you know, add to. But what I tend to do is once you're happy with how it is, just give it a rub up and down everywhere and it will blend in with everything. You can even use your finger through your rubber glove. I wouldn't use your normal finger because your oils on your finger tend to take it, but you can then just blend them all in and give this much more of a dark line. You can then give it a rub here, there and everywhere. You can take little bits on your finger, just like this. We do these onto here, you can see them, and then literally by using your glove, you can, the rubber on your glove will act a little bit like the blending tool here and give you that nice type of rub to it all. Just like that. So that way you can come up with a million different types of weathering and effects that you want to do. But I find using a rubber glove helps because it actually puts it on, it takes it off, but you can just pop it on like this, okay, and then a little bit strong, so just give it a rub underneath. Just go in the direction of the airflow and you get nice streaking. Underside here, I presume we're going to get quite grimy, so we're just taking quite a bit around, a little bit on these tail planes. You can see, be careful with those because they're quite fragile. And there we go, you get this type of grimed up, nice effect to the model without it being too much. Okay, but as I said, if you don't like it, wipe it off, start again. So we're just going to do the same on the tops here. We're just going to give these a bit of a rub with a finger because I've got some grime on here. So we're just going to take a little bit around these leading edges and things and just trying to work it in. And then just sort of blending tops of these engines quite a bit, inside of these dorsals. So obviously we get heat in there and all sorts. Up around the front. So just sort of have fun. As I said, don't like it, wipe it off, start again. So I'm just going to carry on popping these down, just giving a bit of a rub everywhere. And obviously things like white areas, you can dull them down, just take it off your glove. But obviously at the moment you're quite handleable. You don't have to worry too much about handling this, okay? Because the pigments will stick because they're getting caught in the texture of the paint rather than anything else at the moment. Okay, so we're just giving these a rub down. But then what we'll do is we'll come along with a flat coat in a moment, our final one, and we'll literally just knock all this down. But the great thing is you can get in here and give this a rub round like this without the risk of busting anything off. Where if you've got photo etch, you'd have to be a little bit careful where you're going. This way you can just sort of blend it all together. So we're just going around the front now. And hopefully you can see, let me just take this over. You can see now it's really got that worn down look to it. Okay, we've worn down all the markings as well by giving them a rub over. The stars aren't quite as strong and bright in there and everything else. So there we go, easy weathering, no problem at all, risk-free. Don't like it, wash it off, start again. I'm going to stop there. I'm really happy with that, and as I say, it doesn't take too long either. Okay, so we've temporarily got it on its gear. That's just to hold it all up. So what we want to do now, before we go around handling it and getting pigment all over us and everything, we've got another flat coat, exactly the same we did before, neat, as high as I can get the air pressure on the old compressor. So we're just checking, okay, and then all we're going to do is put a light coat right over everything again. And then what this will do is just lock it into position. You will fade back again a little bit, but hopefully with the darkness that we're going to cause by the weathering, you won't lose any of the pigment grime on this, okay? All you're trying to do here is add rather than take away. You're just trying to knock it down flat again, all right, just like so, and then going round. You probably see on the bottom of the wheels, I've given them a flat spot just before I put them on. Dead simple, just centre it up on the bottom, put a little bit of dust down on the table, put them down, you can see where the wheels are going to be, and then you can flatten them off. There we go, that will do. Check the nozzles. And then say, that's just going to lock in all that pigment onto the main body of the aircraft and just give us that now really worn down heavy duty look to the actual model. I don't want to handle it obviously too much, but there we go. There is our very nice, very weathered MiG-29. So now what we're going to do, let that stand again just to go off. At the same time, you can put together, paint up all your undercarriage, everything else like that if you haven't done it yet. I've gone along and we've weathered up all the doors. I've all had a wash on and everything, so I'm going to clean them up now with a cotton bud by just simply going around damp cotton bud, one flying weight, and we just give them a very light wipe over, just so it's not quite as heavy in there, and you might have some little heavy marks on the outside, just so it's all sort of universal blended in, and then obviously we can go around shortly and fit everything into this. The other thing we've got to do in a moment, which is our next bit here, is to crack on and finish off the cockpit. I don't want to handle it obviously because it's wet, but what we do, take the cockpit canopy off, have a look. You can actually unmask now. It's not going to have another coat of anything over this on the main body itself. We might have to do a flat coat over the gear and things like that, but for the moment the aircraft's done, so you can unmask, have a look, see how it actually is, and then what we can do is we've got the seat, resin seat just painted black at the moment, and in a moment we'll come together and we'll show about finishing that one off, getting it really together, and we can get this thing all finished off. Okay, so we've gone around, done the seat, quick walk through exactly what we've done here. Okay, pretty straightforward. What I've actually gone is painted the seat black. The backing of it was done with red brown, and then we've installed all the little photo etch parts. It looks quite good. So what we're doing now is really weathering that in. So we've got a little bit of silver on a fine brush and very lightly just going around dry brushing the area. Just like that, really just to give it some depth and some shadowing. Okay, then next we're going to do is just going to pop some wash on. So we've got a little bit of the black wash. This is purely, clean the brush, to give it some shadowing on that mud red that's on here. So what we're doing is literally popping in, and you should find that the wash will sit in the grooves and it will just grime up the belts and make it all look a little bit more worn down, and just give it that sort of dirty, because obviously it will dry as well, quite dusty. It just gives it all a little bit of a more grimy texture to it all, just like so. Okay, so really happy how that's come out. We've also painted the cockpit, back of the actual cockpit. You see, if we get the camera to pan in today, come on camera. So we've done all in here, just pop that in. Same thing again, we're going to give that a little bit of dry brushing just to bring that up to life, so all the little knobs and dials and all the little circuit breakers on this area all comes to life. And then we're just going to dry brush around this entire top. That way then the seat can go in there, cockpit done, pretty straightforward. The other thing we're going to be doing now is going around, we've got lots of little photo etch parts to go on. So we've got the little vanes that are going to go on the front. Now you do those last, you know, get the vanes on last, but we've got lots of other little lumps and bumps and little nips that have got to go on there to take care of that. We've also gone round and we've put on all the doors. So they're all on. Again, we're going to be doing something with the lights shortly, but I want to do this so we can put it down for a while whilst it all dries off. Okay, so we're just installing the weapons pylons, okay, which are quite a nice just a push fit. What we got is a slightly bigger drill bit here, just to make a little scoop in there to countersink. That way you get a far nicer flush. Obviously picking the best ones for the inside and the outside. Just support the weight of the wing when you're putting these on. Don't be sort of pushing down on it, otherwise you could crack the joins on the wing. So we're just going around doing those now. That's all those nicely fitted in. Be careful where you grab this. Okay, now the other thing as well, you can probably see at the back here, we've got the speed brake fitted, which is pretty straightforward. So all we've done is I've removed the locating pins off of the back. The reason for that is purely because trying to locate them is a bit of a nightmare. Then all we got, a tiny bit of super glue just down on each join. Literally just a fraction. And what we can do is we're going to come along here, pop them in. Okay, so we want them to sit in location. The only thing is the rear parts are going to want to hold their part as well, do their bit as well. So what we're trying to do is make sure this is square and sit them in. So it sits in there just like that. So we've got that clamshell at the back is in. Okay. So then what we'll do afterwards, you might see the activators aren't in the right place. Let that dry, the main parts dry. Then we can worry about sitting them all in the correct place, making sure they're to the right height and everything else like that. So really happy how that's coming out. And that's a nice little touch having that open. I'm glad we did that now because it shows off a little bit more of this engine work that we had on the go and just makes it a lot nicer to sort of look at. So that's all good. So one of the last things we need to do now, as we're getting this one all together, is the actual nose. Now the nose itself, as you can see here, coming through, we've just got the pit off at the end, or the PTO tube. So what we need to do is just cut that off at the end, okay, and then glue this one on the front down here. Okay, so what we need to do is tidy them up nicely. So I've got quite a coarse sanding stick, and all we're doing is making sure that that's flat. Okay, and then we just want to take a touch off the end of the nose as well, because it's resin. It's not going to take a lot. So that's quite coarse, so we just switch to a finer sanding stick. This is a nice fine one here, just to do it. You can probably see it comes off on the end, but I'm using line of sight, but you might want to be a little bit more technical. Now these, you obviously get a seam line running down these. Nice little touch. If you use a sponge, you can polish them in so they're nice and rounded. It would be nice little touch with this kit is to invest in an aftermarket PTO tube on the end, but from our point of view we're sort of stuck with what we got, so we're using a little bit of CA glue just to touch him in on the end, and then what we've got is some vanes which are going to stick to the end as well. So we're just trying to get this centre on there, so we've got him in, and then we're just going to look all around it to make sure it's all okay. And then what you can do on camera, it doesn't look very straight, but trust me, we are on there just like that. If you work it around all the angles, you'll see how it is. But there we go, that's that one on the end. And as I say, we have got some vanes to go in. The seat now we can install, so again we're just going to pop a little bit of super glue on the base. Okay, don't put the top down for God's sake, otherwise you end up with it all types of trouble. But we're just going to centre it all in and make sure it's all set correctly into position, and that gives us a very nice working cockpit detail now. I can't see in there very well, there we go. Nicely done, just like that. Camera's having a play around today, I'm sorry. But that's looking a lot better. So what we're going to do now is just let those little areas dry on there. I'm going to go around now and install all the little veins on there. One of the last things we've got to do is obviously we've got to put in the resin replacement into the chaff and flare buckets which go in at the top here. I'm going to paint them just metal as if they're, you know, obviously been changed out and put back in and things like that, and install them onto there as well, and then go around, get those veins on, little bit of painting all ready for the final reveal.